One weekend afternoon, my childhood friend suddenly called me. I think I'm about to differentiate. There's no one at home. Sob, it hurts so bad. I immediately gripped my phone and stood up. Brandon, don't panic. I'm coming right now. Are you running a fever? Yeah, I'm burning up. My whole body feels so hot. He sounded like he was forcing himself to endure it, but a faint sob still slipped out between his lips. Please, hurry. I know. I'm on my way. Don't be scared. I'm here. I spoke softly to calm him down while hurriedly putting on my shoes and rushing out. Brandon's differentiation came unusually late. I had already differentiated into an S-rank alpha at 16, but even at 19, he'd shown no signs at all. Still, as for what sex he'd differentiate into, everyone had already reached an unspoken consensus. Brandon was beautiful. Long lashes, fair skin. He looked almost like a porcelain doll. Surely he'd become a soft, sweet-smelling Omega, right? Heh. My Omega wife had finally arrived. Despite my worry, I couldn't help feeling a tiny spark of anticipation. Of course, I had no intention of taking advantage of him during his differentiation heat. The priority was to get him to the hospital as soon as possible. Brandon and I lived in the same apartment building. I took out his spare key and unlocked the door. The moment it opened, an overwhelmingly rich scent of gardenias burst out. Like a surging flood, it crashed into me with suffocating force. I choked so badly I nearly passed out, collapsing to my knees as I hacked for breath. An unfamiliar sense of fear washed over me. I had to cling tightly to the doorframe just to force myself back up. What kind of scent was this? Was the pheromone concentration too high? Or was it incompatible with mine? There was no time to think. Enduring the discomfort, I staggered inside and shut the door behind me. The gardenia scent grew even stronger. Brandon was sprawled on the living room sofa, his clothes in disarray, one side slipping down his shoulder. Hearing me come in, he slowly lifted his head, revealing eyes red and swollen from crying. Woo-woo. Alex, I feel so awful. I pressed my hand to his forehead and shoulder. Both were scorching hot. Quickly, I held out my arms. Can you move? I'll help you downstairs. We're going to the hospital. If you can't walk, I'll carry you. Brandon glanced at me, then lazily flopped back down. No to all of that. I want you to hold me. I fell silent. Such a spoiled young master attitude. Thinking that an alpha's pheromones might help soothe him, I pulled him into my arms and let my scent wrap around him. Brandon immediately tightened his grip around my waist, rubbing against me as if searching for the source of the smell. Even though his pheromones made me feel suppressed and uncomfortable, he didn't seem to reject mine. So I released a little more, trying to calm him. My pheromones smelled like sunlight. More precisely, like clothes dried under the sun. It was a scent no Omega should dislike. As Brandon kept breathing in my scent, he seemed to sink deeper into it. His nose brushed against the side of my neck, rubbing lightly, over and over. He murmured softly, Alex, you smell so good. His unconscious teasing made my entire body stiffen. Even though Brandon and I had grown up together, we rarely got this close. And now, he was right in the middle of differentiating into his second gender. Holding him tightly, I forced myself to change the subject. You feeling any better now? Can you go to the hospital with me? Brandon leaned against my chest, his cheek pressed to my skin. A little better, but it still hurts. Alex, give me a little more, he muttered absent-mindedly, slender fingers slipping straight under my clothes. My heart pounded wildly, my face burning red. For an alpha just coming into his desires, this was far too tempting. I released even more pheromones. The scents of gardenia and sunlight intertwined, inseparable. Is this enough? I asked hoarsely. Brandon looked satisfied, yet at the same time as if an even deeper emptiness had opened inside him. His fingers wandered upward, finding the raised spot at the back of my neck. He kneaded it lightly, not too hard, not too soft. Tsk! I sucked in a breath, lowering my head and gritting my teeth. Don't touch there. But Brandon seemed not to hear me at all. His fingertips kept worrying at my gland. Half dazed, he rested his head on my shoulder and spoke in a spoiled, clingy tone. Your gland smells really nice. Can I lick it? What kind of strange request was that? I'd never heard of an Omega wanting to lick an alpha's gland. Was this some kind of physiological response I'd never learned about? I think it'd be better if you didn't. Before I could finish the word don't, Brandon's tears began to fall, one after another. Alex, you said you'd be good to me. You were lying. You must be disgusted by me. You won't even let me touch your gland. You're definitely disgusted. His eyes brimmed with tears, shimmering pitifully. My heart melted instantly. All right, my princess. Do whatever you want. Lick it. Touch it. Anything. Just don't cry. Brandon stopped crying and blinked at me with wet lashes. Really? I can touch it however I want? Really? I steeled myself and answered. Brandon lowered his lashes and leaned toward the back of my neck. He stuck out the tip of his tongue and lightly licked my gland. It was like being struck by lightning. I shuddered violently. An alpha instinctively rejects behaviors that resemble possession. I reflexively tried to push Brandon away, but he pressed my hand down instead. As if tasting something addictive, his gaze locked onto my gland. Then, unable to resist, he closed his eyes and opened his mouth. His canine teeth sank in deeply. A sharp, overwhelming pain exploded through me. I gasped involuntarily. Cold sweat poured down as it felt like my soul was being torn apart, split straight down the middle. Brandon bit into my gland, flooding me with his pheromones. He was temporarily marking me, but why was Brandon marking me? Why was an Omega marking an Alpha? Was he some kind of special case Omega? That was the last question circling in my mind, right before everything went black. That question was answered very quickly. Both Brandon and I were rushed to the hospital for treatment. By the time I woke up, it was already evening. The doctor handed me a differentiation test report. Brandon's. The moment my eyes landed on the words Enigma under secondary gender, my vision went black, again and again. Brandon. How could he be an enigma? Where was my perfectly good wife? Where was my soft, sweet-smelling Omega wife? Doctor, there must be some mistake, right? I blurted out. Could the equipment have malfunctioned? Or maybe the reports got mixed up with another patient's? Brandon is so beautiful, how could he possibly be an enigma? I refused to give up. The doctor looked at me helplessly. Appearance does correlate with secondary gender. He said, but it's not an absolute rule. Don't worry. Our hospital isn't incompetent enough to get someone's secondary gender wrong. I slumped, utterly defeated. Oh, right, the doctor added, as if remembering something. Because your partner differentiated so late, he's developed pheromone dysregulation. In simpler terms, he can't properly control his pheromones. Sometimes he releases them in excessive amounts. I opened my mouth, wanting to say that Brandon wasn't my partner, at least not yet. But the words that came out were, Doctor, is this condition serious? It's not a rare or dangerous illness, he replied. Ordinary suppressants are enough to manage it. However, the most effective solution is comfort and relief from a partner. Natural regulation is always far better than artificially synthesized suppressants. After finishing his explanation, the doctor patted my shoulder and left. I remained stuck in shock. Brandon had differentiated into an enigma. The impact this revelation had on my worldview was no less devastating than being told Ultraman wasn't real. It was a complete collapse, inside and out. I'd been imagining Brandon becoming my Omega for more than 10 years. The first time I met him, we were 4 years old. He was wearing a tiny floral dress with a butterfly hair clip. They were hand-me-downs from his older sister. Even back then, I thought he was beautiful, adorable. When we played house, it was always me as the knight and him as the princess, or me as the father and him as the mother. I called him my wife, and excitedly announced to both our families, when I grow up, I'm going to marry Brandon. When I grow up, I'm going to marry Brandon. The adults burst out laughing. Sure, someone joked. Once you differentiate into an alpha and Brandon becomes an omega, you can marry him. Later, during adolescence, I really did differentiate into an alpha, just like they said. But once I truly realized my feelings for Brandon, I stopped calling him my wife. I was too embarrassed to say it out loud. Still, deep down, I kept hoping Brandon would differentiate into an omega who belonged only to me. Then I could finally call him my wife, fair and square. But now, I suddenly clutched the back of my neck as a sharp pain shot through it. Brandon's pheromones were aggressively occupying my gland. His pheromones were strong. Mine were, too. Of course, they were going to clash. I lay on the bed with my eyes closed for a while, waiting for the pain to ease. When it finally dulled a little, I climbed out of bed and went next door to check on Brandon. He was sitting on the hospital bed, hugging his knees and crying. Woo-woo. Alex, I'm finished. I didn't differentiate into an omega. You won't leave me, will you? I hurried over and sat beside him, grabbing a fistful of tissues to wipe away his tears. Of course not. Don't overthink it. No matter what you become, you're still the same as before. Brandon looked up at me. His delicate face was a mess from crying, yet his eyes were still bright, clear and moving like a lake in early spring. Then, will you still go to school with me tomorrow? I will. I gently wiped away his tears and comforted him softly. "And? Sit in class with me?" His mood lifted a little. He leaned over and wrapped his arms around me from behind, sniffing the back of my neck. "Then, can I still bite you?" A chill shot through my gland. I sprang up from the bedside on pure reflex, retreating a full 3 steps away. That's probably not a good idea." Brandon's expression instantly crumpled, hurt flashing across his face. I scrambled to patch things up. "It's not that I dislike you, Brandon. It's just, our pheromones clash a bit. It hurts when you bite me." "But the doctor said it won't hurt every time," Brandon argued stubbornly, biting his lip. "If we do it more often, once you accept my pheromones, it'll be fine." "Huh? More times?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. I immediately realized I'd said something very wrong. Brandon's lashes lowered, and a few tears splashed onto the blanket. "Alex, you don't like being marked by me, do you?" No, that's not what I meant." I waved my hands, trying to explain, but Brandon started sobbing harder. "I knew it. You only like Omegas. Then go find an Omega. Didn't you call me your wife? Didn't you say you loved me? Now that I'm an Enigma, will you still love me?" His crying threw my heart into complete chaos. Back when we were kids, I'd said, "Wife, I love you," to Brandon countless times without thinking, and he'd taken it seriously. No, it wasn't that I wasn't serious about him. I just wasn't ready for such a sudden change. "Brandon," I said quietly as I wiped his tears, "can you give me some time? I need to adjust." Brandon finally managed to stop crying, sniffling softly. "Then how long will you need?" "I don't know. Maybe a few weeks? Or a month?" "That long? Do you really want to bite me that badly?" "I do." Brandon stared at my gland like a cat eyeing catnip. Then he buried his face in the hollow of my neck and took a deep breath. "Because you smell really good." On Monday, I rode my bike with Brandon sitting behind me as we headed back to school. I stayed in the dorms from Monday to Friday, and the moment I returned, the news that Brandon had bitten me spread like wildfire. Man, no wonder the dorm smells like Enigma pheromones. "Bro, Alex, is it true? Brandon really differentiated into an Enigma?" There was nothing to hide, so I nodded. "Holy, then can you two still be together? If you are, doesn't that mean you're gonna get—" My roommate grinned wickedly, forming a circle with 2 fingers on one hand and poking into it with the other. "Get lost," I snapped, kicking him irritably. "We're not even dating." "If you did start dating, that'd be legendary." Never thought our handsome Alex would have a day where he's delicate and easy to push down. After mercilessly roasting me, he grabbed his books and ran off. I sat alone on the edge of my bed, feeling unsettled. All my roommates were alphas. Every one of them had their own Omega. I'd planned to confess to Brandon after his differentiation. I'd already bought the gift. I'd even thought about what to name our future kid. But now, why had my life turned out so differently from what I'd imagined? Scratching my head in frustration, I felt completely lost. That evening, I went to play basketball to clear my mind. The entire way to the court, people kept asking me about Brandon's differentiation. I even ran into several shy Omegas who handed me love letters. It had been a long time since anyone had given me a love letter. So many popping up all at once, clearly because word about Brandon had spread. I didn't have the heart to throw them away in front of people, so I set them all on a bench by the court, planning to quietly dump them later in some out-of-the-way trash can. But after the game, I realized Brandon was already sitting on that bench. Oh no. How did I forget that Brandon sometimes came to watch me play? Bracing myself, I walked over. Brandon stood up with a damp towel and wiped the sweat from my face, his expression cold. His movements were the same as always, but he didn't say a word. Almost like he was venting his frustration, he roughly ruffled my hair. I didn't dare complain. After wiping my face, he handed me a bottle of water. Just as I reached for it, another hand suddenly slipped in, offering me a different bottle. It belonged to a small, lively-looking Omega. He seemed carefully dressed, even wearing makeup. He looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't remember who he was. "Alex, what a coincidence. Fancy running into you here. Tired after basketball? I happened to bring some water. Here, take it." I racked my brain, but still couldn't recall his name. "Sorry. You are?" "I'm Bianjin," he said cheerfully. "Don't you remember? At the last club recruitment event, I helped hand out flyers for your basketball club." He spoke like we were old friends, eyes sparkling as he looked at me with admiration. "I watched your game. Alex, you were amazing. Your skills are top tier." "Ha! Really?" I laughed awkwardly. Just as I was about to politely refuse the water, a faint stabbing pain pricked the back of my neck. Alex. Brandon suddenly called my name, sounding confused. Am I dead? No, of course not. I had no idea what he meant and could only force a smile. Oh, so I'm not dead yet. Brandon nodded to himself. Then he turned his icy gaze toward Bianjin. So I'm not even dead yet, and someone's already impatient enough to seduce you. In an instant, a powerful wave of gardenia scent exploded into the air, sweeping across the entire basketball court. Every alpha present looked like they'd seen a ghost. The omegas were completely suppressed, unable to move. Bianjin covered his mouth in panic, stumbling backward as he desperately tried to escape the range of the pheromones. Brandon frowned, his beautiful brows knitting together. Why are you still here? Bianjin immediately fled, barely keeping his footing. If he'd stayed even 2 seconds longer, he probably would have gone into heat on the spot. Brandon watched him leave, then turned back to settle the score with me. His eyes were red as he pulled out a thick stack of crumpled love letters from his pocket. So you really do like omegas, don't you? With so many little omegas liking you, which one are you planning to choose? Brandon suffered from pheromone dysregulation. The angrier he got, the stronger the gardenia scent around us became. It pressed in like an airtight wall, making it hard for me to breathe. I could only defend myself weakly. I'm not. And you still say you're not? Brandon seemed to reach his breaking point. He bit his lip as tears of grievance rolled down his eyes. I told you alphas shouldn't go showing off outside. Playing basketball every day. Who are you trying to attract? Didn't you see the way those omegas were staring at you? With so many people chasing after you, you must be thrilled, right? This is such an injustice, Your Honor. I'm just a normal college guy who likes playing basketball. If you're so eager to attract omegas, then go ahead and attract them to your heart's content. I won't stay here and get in your way anymore. Don't come looking for me again. Brandon flung the stack of love letters to the ground and stormed off, crying. 3 seconds later, he turned back. Why didn't you chase after me? Alex, you don't even comfort me anymore? I knew you'd changed. Our relationship can't even withstand a single omega. Brandon. Clutching the back of my neck, I interrupted him weakly. What? He glared at me through tears. Dial back your pheromones a bit. I can't move. I was seriously about to kneel to this spoiled young master. Brandon's pheromones had everyone frozen in place, yet he hadn't even realized it himself. Especially me. I'd been marked by Brandon. Whenever his pheromones surged, my gland throbbed painfully, to the point I could barely stand it. Oh, sorry. Only then did Brandon realize what he'd done and rein in his pheromones. The crushing pressure on my shoulders vanished. He hugged me, lifting a hand to gently rub my gland as he whispered, I didn't mean to. Does it hurt? It's fine. I bared my teeth, forcing myself to endure the pain. That day, I spent a long time coaxing Brandon. Most of the time, though, it was really just Brandon rambling on by himself, sulking and being jealous for ages. He complained that the little Omega's carefully coordinated outfit wasn't good-looking, and that his makeup didn't look good either. Maybe he felt he'd dressed too casually and hadn't completely outshone him. Honestly, Brandon's thought process was something I could never quite figure out. Fashion wasn't something I understood either. All I knew was that Brandon looked stunning no matter what he wore, like he existed on a completely different layer from everyone else. Still, Brandon eventually found an opportunity to show me what he looked like when he really dressed up. It was during the school anniversary performance. The drama club had a play on stage. Brandon was playing an angel. Backstage, with people coming and going, he flapped his huge wings at me and waved. Alex, over here. I followed his voice and looked over. Brandon was draped in white gauze, long feathers floating softly around him, his smile bright and dazzling. I stared, completely transfixed. The only problem was that he wasn't wearing nearly enough. I took off my jacket and draped it over him. Who are you trying to seduce, dressed like this? Brandon chuckled and leaned close to my ear. You, of course. Then he asked, Do I look good? Yeah, you look amazing. My ears burning red, I answered honestly. Brandon blinked at me. Am I better looking than those Omegas? Why was he still jealous over something so random? I sighed and said, Of course. You're better looking than anyone. Satisfied, Brandon went off to line up backstage. Throughout the entire performance, my eyes stayed glued to him. Brandon's beauty, paired with that styling, was basically an alpha trap. I was completely bewitched. After it ended, I waited in the audience until the crowd had almost completely dispersed, but Brandon still hadn't come out. Then my phone buzzed with a message from him. I left my foundation in the dressing room. Come help me look for it. He really was as forgetful as ever. Sighing helplessly, I walked around to the backstage area and pushed open the dressing room door. The lights inside were dim, and the room was empty. Cosmetics were scattered messily across the vanity, and I couldn't tell which ones belonged to Brandon. Just as I was about to text him to ask where he'd gone, I heard a click behind me, the sound of the door locking. Brandon wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. I froze, staring at his reflection in the mirror. "Brandon, what are you?" "Shh." Brandon raised a finger to his lips, signaling me to be quiet. He lowered his gaze, long, pale fingers slipping into the waistband of my pants. "If you don't like it," he said softly, "then push me away." The moment I realized what he was about to do, my whole body jolted. "Brandon, you don't..." It felt like an electric current ran straight up my spine. The tingling sensation shot directly to my brain. It wasn't like I'd never imagined Brandon doing something like this. I'd imagined it so many times I'd lost count. But why was it Brandon pressing me against the vanity mirror? This was nothing like the scenes I'd fantasized about at all. The last shred of my rationality told me I should push him away. But when I looked at Brandon's reflection in the mirror, that flawless, angelic face, those clear, luminous eyes, I lost all will to refuse. "You're not running," Brandon murmured softly against my ear. My face burned red as I lifted my forearm and braced it against the mirror, trying to hide my expression. Brandon couldn't help laughing. Idiot Alex. Like a kitten, he licked the gland at the back of my neck, then bit down again. Gardenia-scented pheromones poured into me. The sweetness was intoxicating, yet sharp as a blade. Pleasure and pain alternated, crashing through my nerves. Thankfully, this time, I didn't black out. Ever since what happened in the dressing room, Brandon seemed happy to repeat it again and again. Whenever the temporary mark on the back of my neck began to fade, or whenever he got jealous again, especially when the one making him jealous was an Omega. Brandon would drag me into some secluded corner, abusing his looks like a weapon, and forcefully help me take care of it. I knew perfectly well what was going on. After differentiating, Brandon had become extremely insecure. That was why he kept using this kind of behavior to reassure himself, over and over, that I was still his. But I had my own hang-ups, too. I was a bit old-fashioned. I didn't want to get into this kind of vague, undefined relationship without a proper confession. And when it came to confessing, could I really accept an Enigma instead of an Omega as my partner? What if, in the end, I still couldn't accept it? Then what would Brandon do? My mind was locked in a fierce internal battle. Finally, when Brandon tried to pull the same move again, I stopped him. "Brandon, maybe we should stop doing this." He looked at me blankly. "Why? Don't you like it?" "I do, but liking it is one thing." Just thinking about it made my mouth go dry. I hurriedly cleared my throat twice. "But whether we should do it is another matter. Anyway, this isn't right. Don't temporarily mark me anymore." "What's wrong with it?" Brandon said, wrapping his arms around my neck. "You smell like me all over now. I think it smells really good." He clung to me, acting spoiled, refusing to let go. "That way, no other Omegas will dare get close to you." "But it hurts, my lady," I said helplessly. "Sorry," Brandon pouted. "I'll be gentler next time." He reached out and pinched my gland lightly. I immediately backed away, panicking and blurting out whatever came to mind. "There shouldn't be a next time. We're not partners right now. We shouldn't keep marking each other." The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I'd messed up again. Sure enough, the corners of Brandon's eyes reddened, tears slowly welling up. "Alex, so you're trying to cut ties with me? You want to go after other Omegas, right? If you don't smell like me, then you can chase whoever you want. Is that it?" No, that's not it." Caught off guard, I realized I hadn't brought any tissues. I could only use the clean part of my sleeve to wipe his tears. "I really haven't taken a fancy to any Omega. I've never once thought about cutting ties with you. If I'm lying, then may I forever get my rebounds stolen in basketball and never get married in my life." Brandon looked like he wanted to smile, but he held it back, puffing his cheeks slightly instead. "Alex, you're really annoying." Yeah, I know. I'm annoying." I wiped away his tears and went along with his words. "I just need some time to calm down. I want to seriously think about our relationship. During this time, don't mark me anymore." I'd actually said something similar to Brandon back in the hospital, but he'd been too anxious. He hadn't even given me a week. This time, I wanted to try again. Brandon looked at my serious expression and finally nodded. He wasn't an unreasonable person. Even though he was clearly disappointed, he still held himself back and didn't do anything else to me. And just like that, the scent of gardenias on my body slowly faded away. I made a quiet decision. If, after these 2 weeks passed, my feelings still didn't change, if I still wanted to be with Brandon, then I would confess to him, and I would take responsibility for him for the rest of my life. Whatever he wanted to do to me, he could do it. I wouldn't have a single objection. That was what I thought. But Brandon seemed a little down lately. Because of his pheromone dysregulation, not being able to temporarily mark me made him unusually irritable. Sometimes, when he was in a bad mood, he'd even stand me up. On Friday evening, I was waiting downstairs at his dorm with my bike when someone told me Brandon had already gone home. Just then, my phone lit up. Our basketball club captain was calling a group of us out for drinks. After thinking it over, I sent Brandon a message to let him know where I was going, and added a reminder. I'm going to a bar with some people from the club. I might be back pretty late. Go to bed early, okay? Because of work, Brandon's parents were rarely home. Ever since we were kids, whenever he felt scared, he'd call me over to sleep in the guest room at his place. But now, as an Enigma, Brandon didn't need to be afraid of anyone anymore. I figured he'd be fine, so I went to the bar without much worry. We drank noisily until midnight, when someone suggested playing King's Game. At first, I was just going along with the crowd, watching for fun, until the drama somehow landed right on me. Number 4 and number 5. Hug. The club captain, acting as the king, called out the command. I glanced at the card in my hand. Number 4. A small boy stood up from the crowd. It was Byung-jin, the Omega I'd run into at the basketball court before. He wasn't even in our club. Why was he here? The smile on my face froze. If I played this game with him, I'd never be able to clear my name, even if I jumped into the Yellow River. Alex? Is it okay? Byung-jin stood in front of me, asking hopefully. I waved my hands and backed away. And no, let's just forget it. I get it. The Omega interrupted me, a little disappointed. If it's inconvenient for you, Alex, I'll drink instead. Failing to complete the task meant drinking. Byung-jin poured himself a glass and tipped his head back. After just one sip, he choked, coughing violently. Cough! Sorry! Cough! Cough! His eyes reddened from the burn, but he still forced himself to drink it down. Tears were almost spilling out. Some of the alphas there couldn't stand it anymore and shouted at me, "Why are you making things hard for an Omega? Alex, are you even an alpha? It's just a hug." Yeah, just hug him! Hug him! Hug him! The chants rose in perfect unison, echoing through the bar. No. My scalp prickled from the noise. I grabbed a bottle and poured 3 full glasses, planning to drink and lose outright. But my refusal was completely drowned out by the shouting. Just then, a pale hand reached out. A cold voice said, "I'll drink." I looked up. It was Brandon. He picked up a glass from the table, tilted his head back, and downed it in one go. He immediately frowned, enduring it, and wiped the corner of his mouth. Then he reached for the second glass. I hurried to stop him. "Brandon, don't!" He shoved me aside. "Move." Ignoring my protests, he drank the remaining 2 glasses as well. After downing all 3, a faint flush spread across Brandon's face. He braced himself against the table, breathing heavily, his fingertips trembling. Worried, I stepped forward to support him. "Brandon, don't do this. I'll take you home." But Brandon completely ignored me. "Don't you like playing with Omegas? Then I'll play with you." He forcefully squeezed out the person who had been sitting beside me and took the seat himself. The previous game was interrupted, and someone suggested switching to a new one. They spun a bottle. Whoever it landed on had to answer a question. Lies were allowed, but every lie meant drinking a glass. First round, the bottle rolled and stopped in front of me. Byung-jin hesitated, then asked softly, "I want to know what you think of me, Alex." Brandon's expression darkened instantly. Already worried about Brandon, I grew even more impatient with Byung-jin. "I don't have any particular opinion of you." Someone next to Byung-jin started cheering. "Drink! Drink!" I raised a hand and cut them off. "Stop making a fuss, I'm really not lying." And I lowered my gaze toward Brandon. "I already have someone I like." The noise instantly exploded, loud enough to lift the roof. Brandon's eyes turned red, shimmering as he struggled desperately to hold back his tears. The next round, the bottle landed on Brandon. Someone asked, "Brandon, do you like Alex?" Another wave of table thumping, chair kicking, and shrill cheering broke out. Amid the chaos, Brandon lifted his head and looked at me with those bloodshot eyes. I don't like Alex. He grabbed a glass and downed it. I really hate Alex. With every sentence, he drank another glass. I don't want to see Alex every day. I don't want to go to school with him, go to class with him, sit on the back of his bike. When I see him talking to other Omegas, smiling at them like some sun spreading warmth, I don't care at all. I don't want to temporarily mark him. I don't want to permanently mark him. Alex is the worst. Tears streamed down Brandon's face, one after another. By the time he reached the end, he was already sobbing uncontrollably. He grabbed the bottle, about to chug the whole thing. I rushed forward and snatched it away. Grabbing Brandon's hand, I stood up. Sorry, we're leaving. Brandon clung to me, acting spoiled and stubborn, refusing to go. He was completely drunk. With no other choice, I dragged him outside by force and stuffed him into a taxi. By the time we got back to Brandon's place, it was already deep into the night. He cried the entire taxi ride, tears falling like pear blossoms in the rain. My heart nearly melted from it. It would have been even better if he hadn't been crying while yelling, "Alex, you big idiot!" I carried Brandon into the apartment and set him down on the couch. He was still sobbing, arms wrapped tightly around my neck, refusing to let me leave. "Alex, you only like Omegas, don't you?" I felt utterly helpless. So all this time, everything I'd said to him had gone straight to waste. When I said I needed time to think things through, Brandon automatically translated it as, "Alex doesn't like me." When I admitted I'd once imagined him differentiating into an Omega, Brandon automatically heard, "Alex only likes Omegas." No wonder he failed his logic exam retake. How could someone so beautiful be so single-threaded? I didn't say anything. I just wiped his tears, gently pried his hands away, and went into the bedroom to make the bed. After finishing, I went back out, planning to carry Brandon in, only to realize he was gone. A sliver of light spilled out from under the bathroom door. I knocked. "Brandon, are you in there?" No response. There was no sound inside. No running water either. "Brandon?" I knocked again, calling his name. Still nothing. Dead silent. Suddenly, a muffled, pain-filled whimper came from inside the room, like someone desperately holding back sobs. Don't tell me Brandon is trying to hurt himself? The thought exploded in my head. I panicked instantly, shouting Brandon's name as I kicked at the door. After 2 or 3 hard kicks, the door burst open with a loud bang. The sight in front of me nearly made me black out. Brandon had his head lowered. One hand pushed his hair aside, the other holding a pair of scissors. The blade was pressed straight into the gland at the back of his neck. A vivid line of blood streamed down, dripping directly into the sink. He was trying to cut out his own gland. "Brandon!" I lunged forward and snatched the scissors away. "Have you lost your mind?" "Alex, let go of me." Brandon struggled with me for the scissors, but he was afraid of cutting me with the blade, so he didn't dare use much force. In the scuffle, the scissors clattered into the sink. I wrapped my arms around him with all my strength. I was breathing hard, my whole body shaking. "Brandon, what the hell are you trying to do? Are you trying to scare me to death?" I shouted at him, terrified and furious all at once. My tone was too harsh. Brandon immediately broke down crying. Anyway, this gland is useless now. I might as well cut it out. If I grow a new one, if it grows into an Omega gland, then you'll like me, right?" "What?" I couldn't believe what I just heard. In this world, countless people dreamed of differentiating into a rare Enigma, and Brandon was saying his gland was useless, just because he thought I didn't like him. Brandon lowered his lashes, soaked with tears, and spoke stubbornly. "Alex, I wanted to differentiate into an Omega too. That way, I could be with you openly and properly. But I just happened to become an Enigma, the kind you don't like. If you don't like me anymore, what's the point of keeping this gland?" My heart ached listening to him. I cut off his sobbing. "How do you know I don't like you? You don't even let me bite you." The more Brandon spoke, the more aggrieved he became, tears spilling endlessly. "And we're already in college, but we haven't even kissed. And you don't even call me your wife anymore. You must not like me." His words stopped abruptly. I silenced him with a kiss. Our lips met for a brief moment before I pulled back, soothing him softly. "Don't cry anymore, wife." While he was still stunned, I leaned toward the back of his neck to check the injury he'd just caused. But Brandon, snapping back to his senses, pushed me up against the wall. There was no way he was going to let me off that easily. Tears still clung to his face, yet the powerful pheromones of an enigma spread through the air. Once I was completely suppressed and unable to move, he turned his face slightly and pressed his warm lips against mine. Brandon's lips were soft and fragrant, gardenia scented. His overly beautiful face was so close I could feel the faint breeze from his fluttering lashes, and the warmth of the last tear still clinging to his cheek. He pried my lips open and kissed me deeper, more insistently, more tenderly. That lingering tear trembled as it slid down, and was swallowed by us both. In the middle of the night, I took Brandon to the emergency room. He kept insisting he was fine, but I just couldn't feel at ease. The doctor who received us was the same one from before. He gave Brandon a thorough examination. The result was that nothing serious was wrong. The first stab Brandon had made went slightly off. It hadn't damaged the gland itself. The wound was still fairly deep, though. The doctor carefully cleaned and dressed it, then applied a bandage. While he was at it, he casually asked Brandon, "Do you still have the suppressants I prescribed last time?" "They're almost gone." "All right. I'll prescribe another 2 weeks' worth for you." With a few quick strokes of his pen, the doctor wrote out a prescription for 50 doses of suppressants. I froze when I saw the number. I know the hospital isn't short on suppressants, but is it really necessary to prescribe that many? Of course it is. The doctor tapped at the keyboard without looking up. He's an Enigma. His dosage is 3 times that of a normal alpha. 3 injections a day? Every single day? I asked in shock. That's right. Only then did I truly understand what Brandon had been enduring. 3 injections a day. Forget the side effects. Just the pain from the needles alone would be hard enough. Brandon had been afraid of pain ever since he was little, and yet this time he hadn't said a single word. "Why didn't you tell me?" Frowning, I reached out and held Brandon's hand. "I didn't want to morally pressure you," Brandon said lightly, as if it didn't matter. "But if you'd told me earlier, then I wouldn't have." I stopped halfway through my sentence, suddenly realizing something. Brandon hadn't wanted to push me too hard. Temporary marking could replace suppressants and ease his symptoms. But if he'd told me that, I would have helped him without hesitation. Even if I didn't like him, I would have tied myself to him anyway. Brandon was afraid that I didn't like him. But on this point, he'd gotten it wrong. He'd mixed up cause and effect. The reason I would go all out to help him was precisely because I liked him. Liked him so much that I couldn't bear to see him get hurt, even a little. The question that had troubled me for days was answered the moment I saw Brandon pick up those scissors. I made up my mind, cleared my throat softly, and spoke. Doctor, if marking me can help ease Brandon's symptoms, would a permanent mark work better than a temporary one?" Brandon's eyes widened in disbelief as he turned to look at me. We locked eyes for a split second, then immediately looked away, both of our faces flushing red at the same time. The doctor, clearly experienced with situations like this, answered calmly. "A permanent mark is, of course, more effective than a temporary one. Once a patient has a permanently bonded partner, there's no longer a need for suppressants." He glanced at me, then added, "But you're an S-rank alpha, right? In your case, a permanent mark may not stay permanent. It could fade over time. Repeated marking, frequent marking, would be needed for it to remain effective." Hearing the words repeated marking, I felt an overwhelming urge to crawl under the desk and hide like an ostrich. Meanwhile, Brandon's face was still faintly red, and yet he suddenly burst into laughter. His bright eyes curved into crescents as he laughed so hard his shoulders shook. "All right, doctor. We understand." By the time we walked out of the hospital, dawn was almost breaking. As we headed toward the bus stop together, Brandon asked cheerfully, "Should we go home and mark each other?" The heat never once faded from my face. "Aren't you going to sleep?" "I'm not sleeping today." He opened his arms and hugged me, leaning against my shoulder, asking over and over, "Alex, is it okay? Is it okay?" I sighed helplessly. "It's okay. It's okay." I liked the way Brandon smiled, especially when he smiled like this, as if an entire galaxy had fallen into his clear, bright eyes, as if none of the world's worries or sorrows could ever reach him. That was enough. At my childhood birthday party, the wish I made was to protect Brandon for the rest of my life. Brandon's birthday wish had been for me to never leave him. There was more than one way to make a wish come true. It didn't have to be me playing the strong, dependable alpha husband and him playing the delicate, dependent omega wife. We'd grown up. There was no need to keep playing house. Back at the apartment building, I'd originally planned to stop by my place to grab something, but instead, I ended up kissing Brandon senseless right there in the hallway, letting him lure me straight into his apartment. The door closed behind us, and the two scents instantly grew thick, entwining until they were impossible to separate. Brandon sealed my lips, cutting off the soft sounds slipping between them. He coaxed me in a soft voice, "Be good, relax a little." At first, he sounded surprisingly composed, but it didn't last long. Soon he couldn't keep it up anymore and started crying and acting spoiled. "Alex, you're hurting me." "Woo, it hurts so much." "Then, should we keep going?" I was worried about him, yet my legs were completely unsteady. "Of course we should. We haven't finished the marking yet." Brandon clung tightly to me, complaining through tears. "Alex, why are you so hard to mark? Are you sure you've got the right spot?" "I'm not sure. Let me look again." "Do you think an alpha's spot is that easy to find? Why don't you do it instead?" "I'd like to." "You're not allowed." Brandon cried for a very, very long time. And honestly, it wasn't really his fault. An Enigma's pheromones naturally clash with those of an S-rank alpha. Even after a successful mark, it's easy for it to fade. It took Brandon a full day and night to finally leave a permanent mark on me. After that, he hugged me with complete satisfaction and fell asleep. I woke up before he did. Even then, he was still clinging to me like an octopus, refusing to let go. I gently coaxed the half-asleep Brandon to loosen his grip, then propped myself up from the bed. But I used too much strength, and every sore, aching muscle in my body protested at once. I winced in pain, baring my teeth. It felt like my body didn't even belong to me anymore. Still, I struggled into my clothes and went back to my own place for a moment. I brought back the confession gift I'd originally planned to give Brandon. When I called his name a couple of times, he was still half asleep, instinctively burrowing into my arms. I spoke softly. "Brandon, give me your left hand." With his lashes still lowered, Brandon obediently handed it to me. I took one ring from the box and slid it onto his left ring finger. Then I put the matching ring on my own. Brandon suddenly woke up completely, struggling to sit up in bed. He stared at the ring on his finger, his lashes trembling with surprise and uncertainty. "This is..." Holding his hand, I lowered myself into a half-kneel beside the bed and spoke seriously. "Yesterday was too rushed. I didn't get the chance to say what I should have said. Brandon, I like you. Will you get engaged to me?" I was still the same slightly old-fashioned alpha. If I liked someone, I confessed. After confessing came engagement, then marriage. None of the steps were optional. Brandon stared at me, and as he kept looking, tears slowly fell. Clear drops slipped from his eyes, but I knew this time it wasn't sadness. He was crying, yet smiling at the same time. "Alex, I'm willing," he said it firmly. Epilogue. Spring arrived quietly. The gardenia tree downstairs bloomed again, its fragrance drifting through open windows, gentle and familiar. Brandon liked to sit by the balcony in the mornings, sunlight spilling over his shoulders, absently rubbing the ring on his finger, as if confirming, again and again, that everything was real. We moved in together not long after the engagement. Life didn't suddenly become dramatic or perfect. We still argued over trivial things, who forgot to buy groceries, whose turn it was to do the dishes, why Brandon's clothes kept ending up on my chair. But every argument ended the same way. With laughter, with apologies, with someone being pulled into an embrace before either of us could stay mad for long. Brandon's pheromone disorder gradually stabilized. He no longer needed suppressants. Some days, when his emotions fluctuated, he would still cling to me like a cat seeking reassurance, burying his face at my neck and murmuring, "Alex, don't go anywhere." I would always answer the same way, "I'm right here." Permanent marking didn't turn out to be a single moment. It was a process, something we built together over time. Sometimes it faded, sometimes it flared, but it never disappeared completely. Just like us, Enigma and S-rank alpha. Not the roles we'd imagined as kids, but somehow exactly right. After graduation, I stayed with basketball, though no longer chasing attention the way I once had. Brandon joined a graduate program he loved, finally confident enough to stand under the spotlight without wondering if he was enough. He was more than enough. One evening, years later, we attended a small gathering. Someone asked, half joking, half curious, "So, who's the one in charge at home?" Brandon smiled sweetly, then leaned over and bit my shoulder. Gently this time. I laughed, surrendering immediately. Everyone got their answer. On our wedding day, gardenias lined the aisle. Brandon walked toward me in white, eyes bright, steps steady. No insecurity, No fear, just love, clear and unwavering. When we exchanged vows, he squeezed my hand and whispered, "You kept your promise." I smiled back. So did you. The future stretched out before us. Not perfect, not easy, but warm, steady, and full of light. And this time, there was no doubt. We weren't playing house anymore. We were home,